Hi, everyone. Good to have everyone of you around. It's always great coming on Zoom by 2 my time and seeing every one of you. Thank you guys for always showing up. And yeah, so I think we should start right away. For so far, I think would be nice to ask. So far, was there any challenge last week? Did anybody try to work on the data sets that came with the exam reference and run into any problem? Anyone like that? If there is, we could touch it before we proceed. But if not, then we'll proceed into module 3. Okay, so Abe says he can hear me. Is there another person that can hear me? Please, can everyone hear me? Oh, lovely, lovely. Thank you, Gus. Thank you, Dolly. Thank you. Thank you, guys. So Abe, you might need to. Oh, okay, great, great, great. Okay, great, lovely, lovely, lovely. All right. Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what part of the world that you are in. So it's probably a happy hour, like I was saying. If anybody has any questions, you could bring it up and then we could, trash it. But over the week, I was looking at some Power BI practice questions for DA-100 exam, and I'm like, okay, if we start taking them in class, it might, slow down momentum. So what I'm thinking is this: how about we finish the course load, and then maybe I think there are some Sundays we might just be able to merge, like the Sunday for row level security. It's not really very deep, so we could merge that with something. So in the end, we might eventually spend maybe 11 Sundays or thereabout. But what we can do is I will try to work as fast as I can. And then for those Sundays that we can merge, like the Sunday of row level security and advanced analytics, we can merge those two with some other Sundays so that we can have like 2 Sundays. Yeah. So those 2 Sundays, we're going to use it to solve like practice questions, and it's going to be no holds barred. We're going to like touch everything, because I mean we've covered the syllabus, so there is nothing that is off limits at that point. We should be able to touch every practice question that will come. And trust me, the thing about practice questions is that when you work on them, what it does is that it enlightens you to some places that you still have some 1 or 2 weakness before you go sit for the exam. So yeah, one of the things I've discovered is that sometimes you could get overconfident. It happened to me the first time I wrote the exam, very overconfident, both like I just waltzed into the exam. And yeah, I failed it by the whiskers. I think I got the pass mark is 700 and I got maybe 600 and something. Yeah, so and I was just being overconfident, right? So that's the sad thing about the exam. And like I said, the exam is weighted. The fact that you did well in one part, the moment you flunk it in data modeling or some of the other parts that have heavy weights, you're not going to score 700. All right, so that's it. But if no one has anything that they need us to talk about, then I will just proceed to today's material. So anyone? None? Okay, okay, lovely. Okay, so let's proceed to today's material then. I will just kick off with my PowerPoint. And okay, before we start our proceedings, someone has reached out to me and like, okay, so is it that Power BI cannot do web scraping, as in scrape images and stuff like that? Can Power Query not do that? Yeah, Power Query can do that. But okay, let me just show you just why Power Query can do that. Just let me just close this Power Query editor. Let's close. No. All right. Just a second. Just put up my old companion. I don't know. I just love this laptop. So yeah. All right. I think we're good. So let's share the screen right now. Okay. Okay, so this is my screen. Let's say I want to get data from IMDb's website. All right, so this is IMDb's website. Just close this. Okay, so I want to, sorry, it's in dark mode. I would change that. Let me just remove that from dark mode. Okay, so this is what the IMDb site looks like, just movies and ratings and all that. You can actually pull this, just in case you want to have a very beautiful visual, you can pull the whole visual like that into Power Query. And let me just show you why you can do that. But it's actually a messy process, very messy process, but you can do that. So this is it. If I want to pull that information, all I need to do is to copy the website, that's the IMDb site, and I'll put that information on this place that I want to get the data from the web. And when I do that, I'm going to click OK, and it's going to try to render that page. So this is what happens. Like I told you, web scraping is about removing structured data from the internet. And structured data, like I told you, is data that exists in form of structure, relational database or something. So there has to be a table. But then some databases have started advancing. Like now we have NoSQL databases, and we have, we talked about that sometime, that when you say NoSQL, even Scott talked about it yesterday, it's not only SQL. So SQL databases take documents in tables. And then if you are very conversant with Azure, like we have the Azure Blob Storage, Azure Cosmos DB, and a couple of other DBs that are in Azure, the Azure ecosystem. They also have some means of storing data. All right. I think I've forgotten the name they call that process, but that's not what I want to bother you with right now. So if you look at what you have on the table right now, you see this table here. Yeah, so if I want to really do web scraping, I want to pick this table out, all right? But then you could see that Power BI has another view called Web View, because Power BI has like a HTML browser or something, I can't remember the name now, that is embedded inside of it. So you can actually see the website the way it is. So that when you are now going to start pulling these images, what you're going to be pulling is when you right click on the web browser, you'll see things like inspect. Let me just do that right away on this my browser here. So sorry, let me just minimize this. When you right click on this browser and you see this inspect right here and you click on it, it's going to bring out the HTML, the whole tags, JavaScript and everything, all right, that make up this place. So what Power BI is doing is that Power BI picks the whole code that runs at the back end of this and renders it inside of Power Query. So right now, what we're going to now be doing is we're going to just use some queries when we write it in Power Query to pull out the URL of each of these pictures. Because if you look inside these codes, you will notice that each of these pictures, everything here has a tag, all right? It's resident inside one of the HTML tags, including the banner. You can see as I hover around the items, you'll notice that whatever it's referring to starts getting highlighted, all right? So you notice all of that. And the reason is simple. Every tag that you see here, you can see as I hover around the tags, subnav and whatever, you'll see that. So that's basically what if you want to bring in images into your Power BI, you can do that. So all you just need to do is you tell Power Query, you write a lot of queries. There are a lot of queries you write because you have to do, when Power Query brings in this thing, it brings in this whole tag like this. In fact, let me just show you. Let me bring it in like this. All right. So let me just say transform data. So when it comes in, yeah, it comes in like this, but you will notice that Power BI has left the space for the pictures because, I mean, it's not part of the structured data we're supposed to script. But if you want to get these pictures, you will have to tell Power BI, hey, I need you to retrace your steps, Power Query, and then I need you to go back to the source. So by the time you remove this step, remove this step, remove this step, you're going to land at the source and you can see it's messy. You can see, so you now have to start building the queries by yourself in such a way that you first trace the images, all right? And then use the images as the delimiters. Okay, so when you delimit them, then you will now, a Power Query will now have those image URL as pointers. So when you call those images, it will keep them in its memory, all right? But you'll still be seeing the tables. Then when you load it into Power BI desktop proper, you'll now see those images because again, Power BI as a whole comes with this HTML reader or something. Forgotten the name they call that thing, all right? That enables it to parse HTML documents. So that's it's very possible you can do that, but it's a messy process. But again, if we have time, one of these days, we're going to look at this whole messy process of doing this stuff. So I'm just going to close this out. Don't want to load that now. And yep, I'm going to discard my changes. Okay. So let's start with the slides that we have for today. All right. So today's module 3, and yeah, the whole essence of module 3 is to clean, transform, and be able to load data into Power BI. So remember, module 1, we just talked about everything generally. Module 2, we dwelt on Power Query. So in this module 3 now, we're still going to dwell on Power Query, but we are now going to be moving things from Power Query into Power BI proper. So we're going to be touching this clean, transform, and load data. Now, somebody can also call it ETL, extract, transform, and load, whichever one you want to call it is fine. But then these are the learning objectives that we would have tried, would have achieved at the end of today's session. So the first is that we'll be able to resolve inconsistencies, null values, data quality issues, etc. The second is that we'll be able to apply basic transformation, value replacements, and all of that. And then the third, you can profile data. We did this last week. I believe you still remember when we talked about column quality and all of that. Then the fourth one is to evaluate and transform column data types. The fifth is to apply data shape transformation to table structures, because yes, sometimes you can get tables that are very messy and the messiness even affects the table structure. So we'll look at that. The sixth is to combine queries. The seventh is to apply user-friendly naming conventions. We'll talk about all of those. And then the last is to edit M in the advanced code editor. So these are the things that we're going to cover today. And we are going to try to be very, very fast. But like I always say, remember, if we say something that is not very clear, the benefit of being in a live session is that you can always stop the whole class and ask questions. And trust me, somebody can be getting enlightened from your question. You probably are going to be helping a lot of people. So please don't feel bad to ask any questions. Don't feel bad to stop the class. Actually, the class is for you. All right. And you're helping all of us. Trust me. So people think I am being I'm the one, you know, teaching. Actually, I'm learning a lot from the questions you guys ask, because sometimes you guys ask me questions and I'm like, hey, wait, can Power BI do that? then I'll go and check and, oh, Power BI can do that. So yeah, so you guys are helping me a lot and we are helping each other. And like I also said, if you are very conversant with Power BI and you think you want to have a session like this, please by all means reach out to me. I would fix you up with whatever session you think, whatever module you think is most convenient for you to handle. And we'll be glad to have you lecture so that I can also sit down and learn, from you. All right. So that said, remember this diagram, we started this from last week. We said there are really like 4 major places you're going to get your data from. You could either get it from your local disk, you could get it from a database, from a web source or some other sources, and then you could actually enter your data manually. And we tried to demonstrate all of these by Sunday last week, but I know we didn't really finish some of them. So if we have time today, I'm going to log into a SQL database and we are going to look at how to pull data either by import, direct query, or dual. All right. So, but again, it's not something different from what we've been doing. So that's why I really did not give it enough time last week. But again, if we have time, we could pull data from it. All right. So there are a lot of techniques that we started talking about last week. We started talking about, we talked about how to pull data from flat files and folders so that you can always enjoy that benefit of not so repeating yourself. We touched a bit on web scraping. We dwelt on the Power Query editor, and we touched slight data transformation. And then today we're going to touch this transformation of columns, merging columns, and all that. And then we're going to touch this to merging queries and appending queries. Then we're also talking about query folding today. And we'll touch some more techniques, data cleaning, shaping data structure, and then some advanced web scraping, which I have just talked about. All right, but again, we might just, if we have time, we might just be able to look at that a bit more details. All right. Okay, so let's talk about table transformation, merge columns. I think I displayed this last week when I split columns. All right. Okay, so I think the only one that I really need to touch right now is how to create a custom column by example. So let me fetch this piece of data. Let me just fetch a piece of data from anywhere. So let me fetch from this one, January reports. You're going to, as usual, have access to all of this in the Google Drive that we use for this class, right? Okay, so let me just pick this. Okay, so let me pick this. Let me click on transform. Remember, you could actually load this direct to Power BI, but it's a bad idea. So always take it to, always click transform so that the system can take you to Power Query, where you can do all these amazing transformations that you need to do on your data. So this is what we have in that data, all right? And let's say I want to create a new column. I could do some of those things here, but if you notice, there is a menu that is, okay, so, okay, great. Ahmed, you're going to get the recording. You'll get the recording surely. It's already there on YouTube, but I'll send you the link. Okay, so there is a menu, or there's a ribbon that is dedicated to column transformation. You can see you have practically the same thing that you have here in the home tab, like almost the same thing, but there are just some key things that you need to do to a column. So let's look at some column transformations that we might want to do. So let's say I want to create a new column, all right? That contains the name of the sales rep and the products that they have, that they use. I could come here and I will click on create column from examples. All right. So I could just come here and say, you know what, I want to use this tool, and I will say create column from the selection. So what will happen is that Power Query will highlight these two cells that I indicated, but I can always choose more if I want, you know, but in this case, okay, let's just leave it at more. So I can now decide to click on this place, all right, this column one here, all right, and type Cameron Diaz. So it picks the name of the sales rep. And then I put a space and type Rice, all right? And then I type MEA, which is the region, okay? And then I press enter to apply. So when I press that enter, you notice that what has happened is that the system first gives me a highlight to say, hey, do you really, is this what you want to do? If not, I'm going to change that. So you'll notice that also automatically Power Query has generated the formula that the M formula. Remember, we deal with M language in Power Query. So Power Query has generated the M language query that I should have typed to query this thing, but it has generated it for me. All right. So you see, so this is what it's trying to say. Okay, so do you want like this? And I'm like, okay, that's what I want to do. When I click on that, okay, it will now drop that column for me into a new column called merged. All right, and you can see the M formula that generated that column is here. So I could always just come here now and change this to combined or whatever name I want to call it. All right, so let me just call this region, sorry, region, or sales person and region, sales by region, or whatever name you want to call it for your analysis purposes. So that's one of the ways you can create a column by example. And you can actually create a custom column by putting in queries or functions. But again, Power BI or Power Query is not going to leave you alone. So let me say I want to call this new column that I want to create region and sales. So I want to merge the sales value, that's the revenue amount, by the region. This is just for example purposes. So Power Query is just going to ask me, so what's the formula? Now, if you're very good with M, this is one good point where you can type the query by yourself. You know, the other time when we're looking at column by examples, Power Query was trying to tele-guide you to say, okay, type whatever, and then I'll create the function for you. But in this case now, Power Query wants you to create the function. That's if you're very comfortable with M. But again, I'm just going to do something basic, not really M. So I want the region, all right? And I want the sales revenue. So this is it. If I want an and in between, I should be able to do this, comma, this, and this. All right. Should be able to do that. It's giving me an error in syntax. And let me see if it allows me to do this. Okay, so where is it? Okay, it's giving me this error in the comma. But anyway, let me just leave that aside for now because I was trying to create a space in between. So let me just click OK. I'll find out why it's giving me that error. I should be able to do that. So I click on this, okay, and okay, why it's showing me this error is because I'm merging two two data types that are not compatible. So let me just change that. Let me delete this, change it to something that we have two data types that are compatible. So custom column, let me use equals sales rep, all right, and products. This should work. Lovely. Okay, so that's it. That comma I was trying to put in was I was supposed to put and is it single stack? I'll try that later and find out why it didn't accept that. Okay, so that's what you do when you create a custom column, and you can also use a conditional formula to create a column. So this is where when you click on that, you have if something something then else. Okay, so I can decide to call this column let's say I want to just extract only okay, let me just say I want to extract only sales that were done in MEA, or okay, let me do that. If region is equal to MEA, all right, then output MEA, else output null. Let me just put a null there, all right? So if I want to add more conditions, I could add that, all right? But if I don't, I could just delete that. So depending on how many conditions you want to have, you can add that. You can also set the type from the word go, so that you don't want to get into the Power Query editor and start, changing or editing types. So if this is what I want, if the region equals to MEA, then write MEA. If not, write a null. So what it means is that it's going to create this custom column for me, and then every column that is not MEA, that the sales is not MEA, is going to write a null for me there. So by this now, if I wanted to filter out all the ones that are not MEA, I can do that. If I want to build another query that will draw on this, I can do that. So that's basically what you do when you create a conditional column. Now, to create an index column basically means to put a numbering column. For example, like, you have numbers here, but these numbers are not part of the table. So if you want to create a table with these numbers showing, this is what you call an index column. You can just start from 0, from 1, or from any number you like. So I'm just going to put an index column that starts from 1, and that is it. So I can move that to the beginning of my table. Sorry, where is my index column? Yeah, I can just drag that to the beginning. Okay. So yeah, so this is my index column. So this is basically how you deal with most of these transformations here. This is for when you have some scientific data. And if we get to that point, I think we will get to that point when we take examples on time series, where you have to predict time series in Power BI. We would look at that, some of these scientific functions then. And for this is you probably want to extract some values from a text. So let's say I want to extract, let me say I want to extract maybe the first 3 words, or the last 3 words, or the first characters, or the text before. Okay, so let me say I want to extract the text before the delimiter. So I could just pick this one. So what I want to do is I want the text before the space. All right. So the delimiter is space. You can see this one is not giving me the option. So I'll just type it, I'll just push my space bar once to let Power BI know that I just want space as the delimiter. So advanced options, I should scan for number of delimiters to skip, just in case I want to skip. Should I start from the start of the input or from the end? That's from the rear, all right? So I want it from the start. So I want you to count in this sales rep column that I selected, the first occurrence of space, cut off the name there and throw it into another column. So when I do this, where is my column? Okay, great. So it took it to the end. So you'll see now that I have just Cameron, Natasha, Cameron, Mike, Sylvester, like that. So that's what happens when you use extract to build a column. All right. You could also use the whatever you could create a dates column and time column, and we will look at all of this when we go into data modeling proper, how to create data tables both in Power Query and in Power BI. We'll look at all of that when we go into the table proper. So I would just ask right now if there is any question. If there is none, I can discard this query. So, any? None. Okay, great. Okay, so sorry. Let me just catch up with the chat. Okay, lovely. All right, so I think so far there is no question. Now, I remember that I have to, just a second, I need to check. I need to check something. Okay, great. Great. All right, so let me push to another stuff we're supposed to cover today, which is to combine data from different sources, merge queries and append queries. So let's touch merge queries, append queries, and then we would proceed from there. So do I want to apply this? Not now. Then I'm going to go back to my Power BI and discard the changes. Okay. So now this is the folder we are working with for module 3. So you'll see it in our DA-100 module 3 Google Drive folder. So the first is append query. I will just open up the reports so that you can see what they look like before we move them to Power BI. Now, there are two reports here, especially for those of us who are business cases that or use cases that every day or every month, user departments send us reports. Maybe marketing sends you some reports, and this usually happens when there is no ERP. So you don't use things like Microsoft Dynamics, SAP, Sage, or any of all of these ERPs that are available off the shelf. So you have a lot of data existing in silos, which means that marketing still has its own data and its own database. The what do you call them now, billing and the other people, everybody has their data existing in silos. So at the end of the day, all departments send their info to the analyst to be able to now crunch them and try to marry them to find out, what the business results are. So if you have that kind of a scenario in where you work, one of the things that would happen is that you notice this a lot. People send reports on a monthly basis, for you to prepare. Now, you can actually be very, very much bogged down with the kind of reporting that they do. But one of the things I try to do is to, especially when I was actively engaged in work, but now I do consulting more of the time. So what I do is that in order to reduce the load on whoever is the analyst that gathers this, if the organization reports on Excel, I would create an Excel template that would, help them enforce some form of data validation. So what that means is the formats and everything that the data should come in, it's already fixed. So that when it comes, all you need to do as an analyst is just to upload, and Power Query will just consolidate for you and generate your new reports and all that, and you could email it. And in fact, if you use Power BI service, automatically all the business stakeholders that are supposed to see those reports will just see those reports without you having to do anything really, just upload. So what it does is that it saves you time, it saves you energy, it saves you man hours, really, it does. So let's say we have this is the January, this is the January reports, all right? So this is what it looks like for each of the zones, and it contains only January. You can see it stops at the 1st of January. Now, let me open the one for February. This is February. And this one contains the report for February. You can notice that because some form of validation has been applied on this, the format is the same. There is no difference in formats. So all you need to do now is to just consolidate this information. The moment there is a difference in formats, you can't use append queries because you're going to have a very big mess on your hands. And I will repeat that again. The moment the format is different, you can't use append queries, all right? You will now have to do some form of data cleaning to be able to bring that data to the format that makes it uniform with all the other data that you have been using, and you really do not want that to happen. Okay, so I see a question. So you need to look at your Excel data first to determine whether to append queries. Not really. I can actually look at them in Power Query, but I just feel that maybe some people are not very conversant with the Power Query, UI yet. So I just thought to show it in Excel first. But if I bring it into Power Query, you'll still see it's the same thing you see really, but I just wanted to make it a bit clearer. So that's why I put that in Excel. I just showed it in Excel. There are some piece of data you can't be able to view in Excel. For example, if the records that they are sending you has over 1 million rows, you really would not be able to view it in Excel. Or you can even view it maybe truncated, but you can view every data you need to view in Power Query and you'll be fine. All right, so so let me bring in those pieces of data from our append query. Let me bring in January. Okay, so this is what January is going to look like. Okay, I think I can close my browser right now so that I can minimize the pressure on my RAM. Okay, so, okay. So this is taking time, but it's going to come up shortly. I can also close Excel too while we wait for these RAM to behave. Okay, and that's why I told you that you need to really have a good machine when you're trying to process data. So this is my trusty old system. I've been using this guy for like 6 years now, and I can do anything on it with my eyes closed. So that's why I love it. I have 2 other machines, but because I'm used to this guy, I don't there's this feeling. Yes, Yogita, go ahead.
Can you answer Abe's question that is in the chat?
Okay, let me see. I have answered the question, Abe's question. I have answered that, except there's another question.
There is.
Yeah, so
So do
you
you
really
need,
do not look, you really do not need to look at it in Excel. You can actually bring it into Power Query. And let me try to reevaluate this. Let me bring it. You can actually bring it to Power Query and view it in Power Query before you move. So you really do not need to view it in Excel, but if you can, why not? There are some data sets that you might not be able to view in Excel. For example, if that data is in JSON, somebody like Tom, Tom likes a lot of JSON files. I don't know why he does that, but if he sends you any data sets and you try to read that, okay, yeah. So you might not even be able to.
JSON's nice and compact.
Yes.
That's why.
Yeah, true. So if he sends you that, you might not be able to read that of Excel. So you would need to read it off something like this directly, or if you have a JSON reader, if that exists, if that's a thing, but I don't know if that's a thing. All right, so let me, okay, so I'll just take this transform and it will head to Power Query. Okay, so yeah, so this is January. Now, always remember that you need to keep an eye on all of this because these are a quick and dirty way to know the quality of your data. And last week I showed you how you can activate this. Just go to view, click on column quality, all right? So, so this is all the data from January. Now let me bring in the one from February. So I'll just go to new source, click on Excel. It's not compulsory that the two sources must be the same type. The first report, maybe January, came in Excel. The second one can come in CSV. The third can come in JSON or whatever formats that's, it's been sent in. So, but this is just for example. So I will bring in the February reports. So it's going to bring up the same thing for me to evaluate and decide whether I want to just load directly or bring it to Power Query. So again, I'm going to bring it to Power Query and yeah, all right. So it's still evaluating. Okay, all right. Okay, so yeah, so we'll now have two queries, January, which is this, and February. So remember, they must be of the same kind, all right? And the same size, the same table dimensions, everything about them are the same, so that you don't have a mess on your hand. So let's deal with this empties that I'm seeing here. Thankfully, there are no errors. If there were errors, we'll now have to do what we'll do. I'll show you shortly how to deal with those errors when you see them. But since they are empty, all I need to do is just, if you notice that all the rows have the same level of empty, 85, 85, 85. So what that means is that there were problems of data that were deleted, but the whole rows were not deleted. It was just the data that was entered into them that were deleted. So probably there's a table format there, or there are some other things that are pasted there. So Power Query is seeing them as entities, all right? So now I'm just going to click on this and say remove empty. When I do this, it's going to remove every empty thing on this row. But you know now that Power Query works in both rows and columns. So as it removes everything for all of these rows, it's going to affect every other row. So you can see that automatically every row has become 100% valid by me just removing the one from one row. Okay, so do they also need to have the same number of row values? No, they don't need to have the same number of row values, just the structure. Thank you, Gus. All right, so I'm going to do the same for February. I'm going to remove all the empties. All right. And the moment I remove it, you'll notice everything has become 100%. So all the empties have gone. So I'm now going to click on Append Queries. Now, there are two options that are here. I can either append this other query on top of this January, which means that I will now have a new January which overwrites the former January that was there, or I could say append queries as new, in which case it will create a third table here, a third query table here for me to do that appending. Okay, so yeah. Thank you, Gus. Thank you, Gus. All right, so let me do that. Append queries as new. So I'm going to get a dialog box saying, okay, so what do we want? I have two tables. Is it 2 or 3 or more tables? I have 2 tables. All right. And the first table is the January table, which is the first table. Okay. And the second table is the February table. If I had more tables, I'll choose these 3 or more table options, and I would, January, February, March, April, May, like that. But I just have 2 tables. So when I click on this, okay, you will see that Power Query executes this M function for me, table.combine. And those of you who are very used, all coming from a Python background, already you know what this is. It just makes you excited. Hey, okay, so object orientation, yeah. We'll talk about all of that when we get to M. So yeah, so we have a new table here, a new query, and you'll notice that it has both January and February. Yep, so these are February entries and these are January entries. So one of the reasons why you can see they're all giving us no errors, valid 100%, is that the table structure is the same. If the table structure was different, maybe one was one row more than the other, you would see that extra row here, and then you have a lot of no. Why? Because what exists in one table does not exist in the other. All right. So, but this is just to keep things simple so that we do not have to do a lot of cleaning. So I can now decide to rename this. Remember, you always have to use names that mean something to you. But I mean, for the purpose of this class, I probably just call this updated or joints or whatever. I like using very funny names in my examples. So when I do that, yeah, so I've changed the name to joints. Just press enter. All right, so notice something. If I try to delete January now, guess what it's going to tell me? Will it allow me to delete it? No. So you say the query January cannot be deleted. Why? Because it's being referenced to another query join. So if I don't want to have anything to do with this January table from this point, when I'm going to load, I'm just going to click on this joints and click close and apply. In former versions of Power BI, you see close and load or close and load to or something like that. But in recent editions, they've started changing the name to close and apply. All right. So what that means, if I click on this close and apply, because I clicked on only these joints, it will take only this table to Power BI so that I can now do, since this table has every other thing that I want to deal with. So I can now build all my visuals based on this table alone. But if I click on this 3 and click on the load 2, it will load the 3 of them. Please go ahead with your question.
Yeah, you go.
Yes, sir.
Just point out as well that if you've got a column filtered on, so for example, if you have your date filtered on a particular day,
okay,
everything else will be forgotten when you once you've applied it. You won't see it. So make sure your filters are correct before applying. Otherwise, you could be, hey, I've got this data, but it's not visible. So make sure your filters are correct.
True. Thank you very much. Thank you for reminding me that. Okay, so yes, so like what I have here now, you'd notice that I have a filter on dates. Because I use this dates filter to remove all the what do you call it now? All the nulls, all the empties, no problems because I didn't touch the date. But if I had probably just selected only maybe 1 or 2, 3, 4 days and I click OK, then you would notice that by the time I click on load, it's only these dates that you're seeing here that are going to load. So thank you, Joe. Thank you very much, Joe. That was a very good one. So I forgot to say that. All right. So yeah. Let me clear this filter. And then okay, so I can proceed to the other example right now if there is no question. So I don't want to save this table. So the other is to merge. And for those of us that are coming from SQL backgrounds, I think you're very familiar with all of this, especially the merge part. Up until today, as I talk to you, I still get confused, by all the kinds of merge that exist. But Power BI is not going to leave you alone to try to figure things out for yourself. Power BI always give you a cue. So these are the tables. Let me just run them in Excel before we go to Power BI so that we can get a feel of what we are going to do when we get to Power BI. Now, like I told you, from my experience being a consultant, when you have data in silos, sometimes it's usually a big problem. So each department only keeps data that relates to what is interesting to them. For example, this is same transactions, all right? But because it's coming from logistics department, that's the department that handles movements, distributions, and all that, they really do not care about the prices of this product or whatever. So they take the dates, the name of the sales rep, the product they are going to move, and then the region they're moving it to, and the quantity. Really, this is what you have in a way bill, really. So any other information that is in this, apart from this, they're not interested in that. All right, so that's the logistics department. Now you have another department called the invoicing, because these guys are the billing guys. All right, now they're producing the same daily reports that these guys are producing, because the reports have to sync, but then these guys are not capturing the number of units. All right, and they're not even capturing the destination. So these guys are just preparing the bill, and they just want to capture the unit price and the revenue. That's all that concerns my department. You're going to see this a lot. Now, as an analyst, so that you can have a bigger picture of everything and have everything in one table, because you really do not want to have tables scattered everywhere, you are going to be faced with this. So you're going to ask yourself, how do I merge these two reports? Remember, append means to take one and put it under the other. They are the same table structure. They are practically the same thing. It's just that one is for one duration, the other is for another duration. So you put one on top, you put the other under it. That's append. All right. But for merge is a different beast altogether. So merge is you bringing two tables and joining them side by side. All right. And when you are appending, it's a straightforward operation. But when you're merging, that's when you start hearing things like, okay, so what's the kind of merge I should use, or the kind of join I should use, for those of you who are coming from a SQL background. So you hear things like left inner, left outer, right full, left until, right until, different kinds of join. I think there are about 10 of them. All right. So sometimes I try to rack my brain to cram all of them. Nah, it doesn't work. So I just, whenever I'm using a piece of data like in Power Query, I just let Power Query just guide me on what kind of merge I should use. So now that we've seen the data that we're working with, that these three are common to each of the department's reports. All right, the sales, the dates, the sales rep, and the product. But this department reports the region and the units. This other department reports the unit price and total revenue. So we want to merge the table together so that we can have a clearer picture of the reports. But again, remember, as we merge these two tables, remember that they are basically the same thing, but from different lens. So on the first, it was only Abe, it was only Cameron Diaz, and I don't know why I said Abe Diaz, maybe I saw Diaz there. Okay, and Rice, and stuff like that. It's the same transaction, that is captured on the first here, all right? So it's the same report, same everything, but it's just that this one is capturing it from, with the features that are peculiar to it, and this other one is capturing the features that are peculiar to it. So you now try to marry all of them together. If this department reported Cameron Diaz for the first day, and this other department did not capture it, you're going to have a big mess when you merge the tables. And you're going to have very dirty data, all right? So you only want to merge when you're sure that the tables are alike and, you do not mind doing the dirty work if the tables are not alike, all right? Because it can be very dirty if you're now trying to merge two tables that the reports are not alike. You bring in a lot of dirtiness into your process, and then you have a lot of work to do. So let's get data. As usual, I'm going to close this Excel sheets so that they don't disturb my RAM, and I'm going to go to merge queries. I'm going to bring in the one for invoicing first. And it's coming out shortly. Okay, so this is the one for invoicing. And I'm going to click on transform so that I'll have the Power Query window open. Okay, so processing the report from the invoicing guys. And there it comes. Okay. So then I'm going to go back again and bring in a new query from a new source. This time I'm going to bring in the one from the logistics guys. And let's see. Okay. Right. Okay. So because I'm very sure that both contain the same number of rows, I don't have any problems. I'm not going to do any further inspections. But if that they did not have any number of rows, I want to read the data further to know what kind of dirtiness I will expect when I merge them together. All right. So for this one, I'm going to remove the empties so that, yeah, I can have my 100%. I'm going to do the same thing for this guy too. I'm going to remove my empties so that I can have the 100%. Lovely. All right, so now I'm going to merge. So I'm going to come to this place, merge queries. And as usual, we could either merge and superimpose on the first table that we're merging on, or we merge queries as new. Let me take this question. Okay, remove the filters. Yes, Gus. The filters are not going to affect anything because I just used them to remove the empties. All right. Thank you very much for reminding me that. Okay, so just in case, not to worry, brother, nothing's going to happen. All right. So for merge queries as new is what I'm going to select. Now, when I click on that, it's going to bring up this dialog box for me. And then I am now going to have the first table because, I was viewing this invoicing table. So that's why it's bringing it out for me first. All right. I can always swap the order if I want. So, but this is the first table, the general invoicing table. And then the second table I want to merge it with is the logistics department table. So I'm going to click on that and bring it up. Now, it's now asking me what kind of join do I want to have? And this is why I like Power Query because it gives me all the clues that I need to know what kind of join. So if I want to join all from the first, which means I want to take all of this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I want to take only the matching from the second, it means I want to do a left outer join. If I want all from the second, which is this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the matching from the first, then it means I want to do a right outer join. Now, when you're in your exam, they're going to ask you this question. You're going to see like 3 questions or 4 questions on join. It's given. over my 4 times I wrote that, you see like between 3 and 4, or sometimes 2 questions on joins. You're expected to know this in your head, but I mean, sometimes I don't even try to, I've tried different ways of trying to remember, okay, left outer means this and this, right outer means this and this, left inner, so, come on, I give up. All right, so yeah, so in this case now, I want this, this part, this whole table, and I want this region and unit 2 to show. So I'm just going to click on the first thing Power BI is going to say is I must select the columns that are uniform. And that's another thing. Lest I forget, please, you can only merge a table, whether in SQL or Power BI, if there are at least 1 column that are common to both tables. If there were no common, there was nothing common between the 2 tables, you will just see this error here, and it won't allow you to proceed with the merge. But there has to be something common between both tables. So I'm looking at this, this, and this. So these 3 rows are common to both tables. All right. So if there were some, like for example, if instead of MEA, some people, so in some places you have US, in some other places you have United States, in some other places you have USA or stuff like that. Now I will use this thing called fuzzy matching. Fuzzy matching is when you have some matches that are not exact. So when I select that fuzzy matching, Power BI is going to open another dialog box, and then I'm now going to tell Power BI what those fuzzy matches it should expect should look like. So I'll tell Power BI that whether you see US, USA, US, United States, or whatever other way you see it, it just means the same, this USA. So that's what you do with fuzzy matching, but we are not doing any fuzzy matching here. So the kind of join that I'm going to do right now, can somebody tell me the kind of join I'm going to do? Anybody? Anybody? Please, you can unmute and tell me, what kind of join should I do based on what we have here?
You're gonna do some sort of inner join, or
okay.
even a union. I don't know, something.
Okay. Now.
Oh, okay.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, I was thinking full outer.
Full outer. Okay.
Yes.
So full outer takes all the rows from both, right? With the common rows and then merges it together, right? That's one way. But
yes.
You know the thing about Power BI and Power Query still does not leave you stranded, just in case you even do not know what kind of join you should do. Whenever you pick any join, there will still be an option that will come out for you to remove the rows that you do not want. So let me say I mistakenly say, let's do full outer, all right? And I'll click OK. But that is not the kind of join I should do. This is what Power BI is going to do. Power Query is going to open a table for me, and then it will still bring everything that has to do with that logistics into this place and tell me to, whenever you see this arrow going 2 ways, it means you can expand this. So the moment I click on this, Power Query will now ask me, hey, guy, what columns do you really want? You understand? So you see why Power Query makes you a very lazy analyst. No matter what kind you choose, it will still bring it out for you like this and tell you, guy, I know you might have made a mistake when you were, doing this stuff, but hey, correct yourself. So I'm not going to look at it and I'm going to, okay, so I have the product. So I'm going to drop this one. I don't want you to bring it in from the logistics table. I don't have region, so you should leave that. Yeah, I don't have units, so you should leave that. I have sales rep, so remove that. I have dates, so remove that. So I think I'm done. So I only need 2 tables, 2 columns from the logistics table. And I'm going to say, and if I say use this original column names as prefix, it will bring the column name as January logistics region, January logistics unit. But if I remove this, it's not going to put that general logistics in front. So let me just leave it so that you can see what I mean by that. Okay, so you can see general logistics.region, all right, and then general logistics.units. So but in this case, if I didn't want that to happen, I could just have clicked on that and removed it. So I'm just going to delete this so that I have that as just region and units. Come on, don't freeze on me, come on. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so that's it. So now I can decide to move this to where I want it to be. So let's say I want to move it to this point, and I want to move this one, the units before the unit price. So I have my table set, all right? And then always remember, you have to check the column quality to make sure that your column is valid 100%. Any column that is not valid 100% is an error, a big time bomb waiting to explode when you load that table into Power BI. So you always want to make sure that your table is, yeah, on point. Okay, so yes. All right, so that's it about joins and about merges. Anybody wants to ask a question, or we should just proceed to the next thing on our list? Anyone? Any questions? Okay, no questions. So what is query folding? Like I told you, one of the advantages of Power Query is that this language called M. Okay, I think there's a question in the chat. Oh, going great. Thank you, Kishan. All right, so there is this thing called query folding that the M language does. Because Power Query can actually be a very massive workhorse, in the sense that I have seen Power Query process like 500 MB of data of Excel table. You understand that Excel, what the data model is almost like 500 MB, you know. So the Power Query can be a workhorse. In order to prevent it from taking a lot of system resources, there's something that is called query folding. And this is what it is. Let me just show you an instance. I'm going to right click on one of these steps. Okay, for this case now, if you see this option here, view native query. This view native query means that if you were active, it means that Power Query is doing query folding. This is what query folding means. As we are doing all this transformation, doing all these merges and all of that, if this information were generated from a source that allowed Power Query to do query folding, like if it were like a SQL database or Azure or one of these other databases, what will happen is that as we are doing this transformation and we're doing whatever we're doing in the M language, Power Query is creating a native query. For example, if these tables came from a SQL database, Power Query will be creating a SQL query for all these steps that we are doing. So just as you're seeing these steps showing in M language, like you have it here, this one is showing in M. For every step that we do, Power Query will generate it in SQL. Why? So that, Gus, you're going to have it's always recorded. It's always recorded. It's always recorded. All right. So what Power Query does is that it's going to have the stuff generated in SQL. So as you perform this step here, it's going to generate a SQL native query for it. As it generates the M query, as you perform this step, it will generate an M query and generate a SQL query. That's assuming that this thing was from a SQL database. Why? So that the moment you are done at the end, the moment you click close and load or close and apply, Power Query at the same time also pushes that query to the SQL database source where these tables are coming from. So that when you're bringing these things inside next time, or when you're doing stuff next time, you're not stressing your Power Query's internal memory to do this. Every other thing is being done in SQL. So that way, Power Query will reduce the system resources that it needs to perform its query. So if Power Query does not do that, then, for example, like this Excel, this data that is coming from Excel now, Power Query cannot fold it. So what it means is that when I want to rerun this query, I want to do anything to this query later again, Power Query will use my system resources to pull the data from Excel, stuff like that. But if it had come from a SQL database or some other database that Power Query can fold a native query into, Power Query just immediately just ships processing speed and everything to that external database, and it's done, without having to impinge on your system resources. So that's what query folding does, and that's why you're always encouraged, if you want to process data, process it from a source that Power Query can fold natively. All right. So Power Query loves SQL databases and some other kind of databases too, but when you're pulling data from folders, Excel and all that, for some of them, Power Query cannot fold them. So it's going to have to now rely on your system resources. And we hope that your system can really have enough juice to push the analysis that you need to do. All right, so with that, we've talked about query folding. If there's any question on query folding, please put it up in the chat, or please raise your hand and ask. I would be glad to answer. But if not, I would want to move, because we are at 3:15. I want to always make sure that at 3:30, I don't want to keep you guys bored, just boring you guys with all this plenty Power Query talk. So any questions? I think someone
Not
is
boring,
unmuted.
it's very interesting.
You're not boring anyone, Ugo. You're smashing.
Okay, thank you.
Really good.
All right.
So in query folding, we don't have to do anything.
No, you don't have to do anything. It's doing it naturally for you. Maybe if I have an opportunity to display collecting data from SQL today, because I don't think with this time I could do that, I would show you how the query folding works, and you can see while I'm bringing in the data, you can just see the queries and everything folding and just generating. Okay, so let's talk a bit.
I have questions on query folding in the.
Okay, no problems. When we get there, we'll take more of those questions on query folding, right? So,
Hello.
oh, go ahead, Dolly.
Okay, I wanted to ask that let's say we move a data set like an Excel data now into the Power Query. Is there a way we can allow it to append automatically? Like when we did January and February now, we already appended it. So maybe we move March Excel file into it. Do we still need to go through the process of saying append queries and choosing the tables it should append to? Or is there an automatic way to do it that whenever it sees a familiar table, it just appends it automatically?
Lovely. You would need to view the recording of last week. So if I wanted to do what you just said now, and I want to execute it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my January, bring in the February, and merge it. But I'm going to make sure that they are coming from the same folder. All right. So by the time I receive the March report, all I need to do is just to move the data from March into the same folder and just refresh, and automatically Power Query is going to pick everything. So that's how that works. So it's possible, very possible.
If we are already choosing the file from the folder, like maybe we got the file from folder instead of file from Excel.
Okay.
Is that the way it works?
No, like I said last week, you have to plan what you want to do ahead, no matter how simple it is. Anything you want to do in data has to be pre-planned. So you need to sit down and ask yourself, how do I receive this information? If you know you receive information monthly, like on January receive reports, February receive reports, March receive reports, it's usually safer when you're running your analysis. The initial time you're even building your query with Power Query, you put everything in a folder. So as you receive whatever report it is, you just drop it in the folder, refresh, it picks, runs, drop in the folder, refresh, it picks, runs, like that. So that's what I would do if I'm the one building that query.
Okay, thanks.
All right then. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about data cleaning, shaping table structures, and we can't touch advanced source scripting today again. No, we'll probably will do that some other day. Okay, so let's look at. I'm going to just close this query because we're done with it. So do you want to apply your changes? No, not now, not ever. Okay, not a problem because we'll miss you. Or you can always watch the recording. All right. So let me discard these changes and yep. All right. So I want to talk about data cleaning. And to do that, I'm just going to bring in a piece of data from Excel again, from this our module 3 table. Before we talk about data cleaning, let me just do a brief talk about data cleaning. All right, now this is it. Now, this is the anatomy of a clean data table. You see this table that you see right here?
We had that lesson yesterday.
Yeah?
I said we had that lesson yesterday, right?
Yeah, we did. We did. So this is what all tables want to be like when they grow up, all right? This is just like this. This is how good tables look, all right? All tables want to be like this when they grow up. So every good table has features in columns. So all of these things that you see here are features. If you're coming from a SQL background, they are called fields, all right? And then observations or records in rows, depending on what background you're coming from. So if you're coming from a data science or AI background, they're called observations. So each of these lines, each of these rows is an observation. Each of these columns are features or fields, all right? So depending on where you're coming from, they're either called observation records or feature fields. Now, every clean table has these features. The first is that in all the columns, they have the proper variable type. And which means that if this is a date, then everything here dates. If this is text, everything here text, all right? And then there are no null, no empty or non-conforming values. So for example, in this place that we're supposed to have dates, we now have things like text or whatever, all right? And then the features and fields and columns, observations and rows, and no duplicates. Really, yeah, no duplicates. Because somebody asked me one time, okay, what if I go into Walmart and I buy maybe a piece of maybe this and a bar of chocolate and I walk out and then 2 minutes later I come back and I buy only the same bar of chocolate. Is it not going to be a double transaction? The answer is no, because the database in Walmart is going to capture, yes, at 2 different times you came in, but those 2 transactions are going to have different transaction IDs, all right? So it cannot be a duplicate. The law in database or record management is that every transaction must have a unique identifier. So even if it's the same particulars, all particulars of transaction are the same, the ID must be different. It's only when the IDs are the same that we'll know, okay, this is a duplicate, and then we'll find a way to expunge it from our system, all right? So this is what a clean table looks like. Now, there are 2 kinds of dirts that you're going to see. There are dirts that do not affect table structure, all right? So we see things like there's a null value, NaN, and stuff like that. There are different ways to deal with dirts that do not affect the table structure. So you could either use techniques like to fill up or down. Sadly, Power Query does not fill left and right. So you could do deletion, you could do imputation, you could do whatever. And then there are some dirts that affect the table structure. So to deal with this, you need advanced techniques like transpose, pivot, and pivot, etc. So I'm just going to use the next like 10 minutes so that we're going to round off, round off shortly. So a table is said to be in pivot form when it has a crosstab. And you know that if you really want to build a model, whether you're building a model in AI or building a model in BI, your table cannot have a crosstab, something like this, all right? So that's the thing. Though we have different data models in AI and different kinds of data models in BI, the tables that fit them have the same characteristics. They must be clean and they must be arranged in that same format that I showed you earlier. All right. So how do we deal with those tables that are abnormal? For example, you have, this is a normal table. This, like I showed you, this one can go into any model, either an AI model or a BI model. It's ready for processing. But this pivot table cannot go in. So you have to unpivot this table to make it have these rows, observations in rows, and then, you know, features and columns. So let's take some examples. I think now we're done with PowerPoint. Let's take some of these examples. I'm going to close PowerPoint to ease the pressure on my RAM. All right, so let's take an example. Does anyone want to ask a question? I think somebody just unmuted. Did someone just unmute? Okay, no one. All right, so
No
great.
question.
No question. All right, great. So let's proceed. Let me get, I'm going to go to this our folder. This is our folder. Now there are 4 scenarios that I would have loved us to look at. Remember, there are 2 kinds of dirts. Dirts that affect the table structure and dirts that do not affect the table structure. So for this first one, we have a table that it has dirt inside, but the structure is great. All right, which means that all the columns are intact and everything, but it's just that in each of the columns we have dirt. So for example, here we have question mark, question mark, question mark. Here we have NaN where we're supposed to have numbers. Here we have dash. Maybe somebody was trying to put a 0 and the system captured it as a dash or stuff. All of these are dirty, so we need to work on all of them. So, but you notice the table structure is intact. It's just that there's some dirt inside. So let's bring this into Power Query and just deal with that. Okay, so let me pick the first dirty table, great structure. All right. So let me, okay, great. Right. So let me click on transform data and let's have it in Power Query. All right. So okay, great. So this is our table. This same table you saw in Excel, this is it in, okay, Abe, right. Thank you, we'll miss you. All right, so this is the same table that we were looking at in Excel, all right? And we are looking at it right now in Power BI. So you can see the question marks, you can see the NaNs, you can see all the dashes and everything. And then you can see our warning telling us that, hey, you only have 4% valid, 96% empty. All right. Same thing for this, same thing for this, same thing for this. But when you come to this one, you would notice that, yeah, it still has empty, error, no, and then let's just pull it from here. Why you'd notice that these ones are not marking the errors is that we have not enforced the type on all of this. So for example, these are supposed to be numbers, but because we left the type as ABC123, in Power Query, ABC123 means any type. Since we have not enforced that type, it will show us that everything is fine. But the moment we tell Power Query, hey, we need this to be numbers, and we change this to decimal numbers, yeah, Power Query will tell us die error, all right? So same thing for this one. We want this one to be decimal numbers, and it's always very good for you to determine the type, all right, before you move it into your data table. Sorry. So here we are also going to force this. Since the units are in whole numbers, we will just come and use whole number here, all right? And then yeah, we'll get the errors. So let's deal with, anytime you have a lot of errors like this, the first thing I like to deal with is the empties, because you can deal with that from any row. So I'm just going to use, maybe let me use this one, sales rep, and then remove the empty. So automatically you will see the sales rep that this is 100 now, this is 100, this is 100, this is 100, but units is still a problem. Why? Because there are some errors in the value. So I have to deal with this error for this one so that it can be valid. Now, I can decide to just click on this and I can decide to, let me say, search. Okay, let me make this list complete. Let me say I can decide to say, okay, error. Let me see what it brings out. All right. Okay, I'm avoiding to do a direct replace, but let me do that. So I can just right click on this and say replace values. All right. I can also filter it away. So I can decide to say replace values, and this, anywhere the system sees error, it will change it to the value that I replace it with. So I can decide to value, no, it's going to give me an error. Okay, let me remove this change types. Sorry, I'm just going to fix that right now. Okay, so I would again remove the empties. Okay, and now I'm going to filter before so that I can have the NaNs. So I'm going to click on this and then click on only the NaN. So yeah, so I have my NaNs, right? All right, so let me accept all of them here. Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that everything was working. So now I can decide to remove the NaN and the dashes as part of the filter, and I click OK. So remember what Gus said and what Gus reminded me of and what Jonathan reminded me of, that when you filter out, what happens is that any piece of data that you filter out does not make it to the data model. And if you notice, let me clean this. You'll notice that this report here is for Cameron, all right, MEA, and we have every other thing, but because of this NaN, if we filter this NaN away, then what that means is that we will not have that Cameron anymore in our reports. Do you notice? We don't have it anymore in our reports. It's gone. And this is good if you're building an AI model, because for an AI model, you're just trying to, train an algorithm. So you can decide to just delete as much data that you have that is not complete. But for BI, it's not really correct. So the natural thing you should do is whenever you have data that is blank or stuff, is to reach back to the stakeholders to say, hey guys, I think you guys should supply this data. If not, if we decide to change it or delete it or whatever, it will remove that whole record from our analysis. And you really do not want that. But for the purpose of this, our hands are tied. There's nothing we can do. So for this one too, we can decide to, so now that we have dealt with this and we have gotten all of them as numbers, we can now change this to, decimal, all right? And okay, yeah, there's still a lot of nulls, no problem, we'll remove the nulls. Okay, and then we can also do the same thing for this. We'll just remove the question marks and all the question marks will go. But you'll notice that there are still a lot of nulls. So the same process, we can filter all the nulls away. You can see the nulls here. You can just click on it and filter it away and all the nulls will go, all right? And yeah, so all the nulls have gone here and all the nulls have gone. And then we are left with the empties. So again, we can just remove empty and our data is now 100% ready. So we'll have 100% everywhere, all right? So again, we should always remember to change. So this is decimal. Yep, it's 100%. This is units and it's whole number. Yep, 100%. Okay, so with this, our data is clean and ready for loading. So that's how you deal with data that is, this table structure is still great, but you just have dirt inside. So I'm just going to delete this quickly and try to see if I can touch one more. Okay, so do you want to apply changes? No, I don't want to do that. And let me touch one more before we call it a day. I really want to touch. Okay, let me touch this one. This one is very easy. This one is just basically a report that is cross-tabulated. When we say cross-tabulated, it means it has some form of pivot inside. So it probably was generated by a pivot table. A crosstab report is a report that has both row and column headers. This is is a travesty in data analytics. It should not happen. You're either supposed to have, in fact, you're not supposed to have headers on your rows. What you're supposed to have are just observations. So the fact that there are headers here means that we will have to unpivot this whole table, all right? So that these things now will just change the form of the table. So what this does, if we want to unpivot, this is basically what unpivoting means. So let me just insert this. So it means that we will have this east, all right, down, and then we will take all these headers and transpose it down this way. All right, let me just show you how it looks so that when I do it in Power BI, it doesn't look strange. So I'm just going to copy this, copy, and okay, sorry, let me insert this column here. So I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to click on transpose. Yeah. So this is it for each of the, yeah, so this is it for each of the data. All right. So let me just bring this down a bit. So now when I unpivot this, this is what I'm going to have. And then this is what I'm also going to have. I'm going to transpose this. So transpose, sorry, copy, and then transpose. They don't allow part of the same size. Okay, let me just, oh, I see. Okay, so this is, but you basically get what I'm trying to do so that I don't waste time on this, all right? Because I will need to count the number of rows there and select it while I transpose. Okay, so, okay, I'll just write an Excel function equals to transpose and all that. But I don't want to go that route because of time, not time to do all of that. So that's basically what unpivoting does. It takes the original shape that you have, right, and then changes it so that it puts it in a format that is ready for analytics. So I'm going to bring in this data now. Dirty table crosstab structure, and yeah, okay. So I'm going to just discard any changes. Okay, discard this. So I'm going to bring that in right now. Get data, go to Excel, and then I'm going to get the table from here, dirty table crosstab structure. And it's coming up. So you see that thing I did in Excel is just one step in Power Query, and that's what I'm going to do now. Okay, so this is my crosstab. I'm just going to put it into Power Query. And then as usual, Power Query is going to do a couple of steps for me. It's going to get the table that's this source. It's going to get it from the source. It's going to put the navigation items for me. It's going to promote the first rows as headers, and then it's going to change the type. So this is the data that I have. I already have the first rows promoted as headers. The first thing I'm going to do is to remove all the nulls, all the empties. So let me have that. Now I have my data the way it is. But remember, I cannot do this. I cannot use this for analytics. So I have to transform it by removing all the rows and bringing it down, because you cannot have you can't have this. Jeff, I'm going to put you, the third, I'm going to put module 3 inside the folder once I'm done with it now. I'm going to upload it. Okay. So, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to right click this one, because this is the row that I want to maintain. And I'm going to tell Excel to unpivot, Power Query to unpivot other rows. So by the time I just select this one and right click on it, I would see unpivot other columns. I can find that in some of these other places here, like transform. You'd see this pivots and unpivots. You'd also see that, I think here, if I'm not mistaken, no, it's not here. It's just this transform and this one. Okay, so, but I like using the right click because it makes things faster. So I'm just going to click on unpivot other columns and bam, yeah. So you can see all the east, all the Range Rover, everything that was for the east. Range Rover, this is the amount. Toyota, this is the amount. BMW, this is the amount. Mercedes, this is the amount, and all that. Same for north. So it transforms that table that I just showed you into this, and this is ready for any form of analytics, whether BI or AI. You can always push this, because we have now succeeded in putting down everything into features in rows and this in columns. So that's one. I really want to touch one more table, if you allow me, just one more table, and we'll call it a day. It's already 3:40. In 5 minutes, I promise you, would be done. So discard this. Yeah. Okay, so this table here is, let me use this like this. It's just show you, you would have seen a report like this in your office. A lot of reports come like this. This used to be like my nightmare those days when I did reporting. So you would see tables like this. It's scary, very scary. Region, the products, then you would see the products here. This is for January, this is for February, this is for March, this is for April. Now, before the advent of Power Query, analyzing this kind of a table was usually hectic, you know, because if you're using SQL, you have to write a lot of code to make this table look like what you should use in your analytics. All right, but now with the advent of Power Query, you don't really need code at all. I'll just show you how to do this. It's the same process. Whenever you have a pivot like this now, a cross tabulation that exists, the first thing you want to do is to kill the cross tabulation. All right. So every of this will become what do you call them now? Will become rows. So for example, we have east, just like what we just did now. We had east, but this time east will first have the month, which is January, and all of that and all of that. Then inside the January, we'll have Range Rover, Toyota, BMW. Then we'll have North. Okay, we'll have January, we'll have February, we'll have March, we'll have April. Okay, let me just show that, because I told you guys 5 minutes and I'm done. So let me get that data. I'll get this one messed up structure, and I will just put that up here. Okay, so one more secret I'll tell you is this. Whenever you have more than 2 layers of headings, like if you look at this, you have the month and you have the other products that you're trying to, you have 2 layers of headings. when you click on transform data so that things go into Power Query, you should, your best bet is to tell Power Query, you know what, don't help me with any promotion of the headers or any other steps that they do, only just bring in the data from the source. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this, and remove this, so that the only thing that I will be doing is to say Power Query, just bring in the table for me from the source. All right. So now I told you whenever you see these two things here, you can expand it. It means it's a table you can expand. So I'm going to click on this and ask Power Query to expand all of the columns for me. And it's going to expand all of that for me. All right. And I can decide to now delete this because I don't need this name Crosstab, which is the name of the sheet. So I just remove this and it's gone. So now I have the month, the January, and all of that. Now, the first thing I'm going to do to this table, you can notice the headers are a mess and everything. The first thing I'm going to do to this table is, okay, let me just remove this one, and this one, all right? Remove columns. I'm going to transpose what I have here. So I'm just going to click on this transform here and click on transpose. It's going to make things a bit sensitive or a bit, just put it in like, let there just be some form of sanity, all right? So yeah, so this is what I have here. Now, already now I have January here, then I have region, I have the Range Rover and stuff like that. So this is what I'm going to do. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fill everything in this column so that I don't have blanks. So I want this January to fill here, January, this February, so February, this March, this April, all right? Based on the kind of headers that I had in the data. So I'm just going to come here, click on fill down, and Power Query is going to fill that for me. So now my table is now looking like something like I want. So at least right now I have month, then I have region. So I have a structure somehow that I can play with. I'm going to elevate these first rows now as headers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this place, use first row as headers. You can also see that here, use first row as headers. So you can even see it when you right click, all right? Whichever one you want to use it as is fine. So use first row as headers. Yeah. So when I do that, it's going to move up the month. It's going to move up the region. Then it's still going to have a pivot table. But now we have a sensible pivot table that has the two headers arranged the way we want it. So remember in the first place, we had just one header, which was the product. But now we have two headers, which is the product and the month. So unlike the first time when we selected just the first row and clicked on pivot, now we are going to select these two rows because we have two headers. The trick is this: for every layer of header that you have, it means one extra column when you're clicking on pivot. So right now, all I'm just going to do is I'm going to click on right click and click on pivot other columns, and bam. So it gives me everything the way I want it. So this is January, this is Range Rover, this is for East, January Range Rover for North, January Range Rover for South, January Range Rover for Midland, January Range Rover for Pacific, and like that. So that is, yeah, that is it. So I would ask you to do this last one as an assignment. I really hoped I could touch this, but this last one is the mother of all dirty tables. It's highly messed up. It has everything that we want to achieve. So you see the dirt, there are blanks, there are nulls, there are non-conformities, there are everything. And we want you to arrive at this. So try your hands on this, and then let's talk about it in the chat. If I discover that maybe there are some problems, I probably will just do a small recording of me solving this in 2 minutes and upload. I think that will be fine. So thank you very much, guys, for sticking with us to the end. So if there's any question, I'll just take it right now. But if there is none, we probably will continue the discussion in the chat.